The year is 1380. The place, the bedroom of Lord Edmund Custis, an English nobleman about to marry the 17-year-old Joan. All is ready. A notary sits at a desk near the bed, sealing his scroll with wax. 2 clergymen wait beside him. At the foot of the bed, 2 witnesses fidget, adjusting their clothing. When the bride enters, all eyes turn to her. She is beautiful, a prize to be displayed, and then she is gone, swallowed by the curtains as the wedding ceremony begins. Once the vows are exchanged, the bedding is stripped from the bed, leaving an empty space under the canopy. For the next few minutes, the room becomes a stage. As Edmund and Joan reenact their sacred duty, the clergy chant prayers, the witnesses watch intently, and the notary takes notes. After the deed is done, the 4 men file out to discuss the evidence. Edmund and Joan hear them talking but cannot see their faces. Their own reflections stare back from the glass, distorted and alone. But we can see the notary's face. He dips his quill in ink and writes, "On the night of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, in the year of grace 1380, before me, Thomas de Berwick, notary public, there were exhibited the man and wife, Edmund Custis and Joan, his wife, in the house of the said Edmund in the county of Sussex. And they did openly and willingly show me the marks of their copulation, namely the bed was dishevelled and both were sweating, and they willed me to bear witness of their perfect marriage." Was this a private ceremony or a public spectacle? Think of your own wedding night, a celebration with family and friends, an erotic interlude shared by 2 people, a prayer of commitment spoken before God. Now multiply those feelings by 4. Add a judge and a scribe. Remove the privacy of closed doors. You enter the world of ceremonial verification. Weddings were a way of confirming mutual attraction, but also of confirming the identity and reputation of the estate. Only when the legitimacy of offspring was crucial would the king or queen attend a wedding. Both parents often present, along with godparents, senior relatives, a notary, and even representatives of the local clergy. Guests watched for signs of fitness, competence, and mutual desire. They waited for a clean bill of consummation. Then came the wedding night, a spectacle of lights, music, food, and carefully choreographed rituals. The couple would enter as man and wife for the first time. They might dance or jest. Then come the curtains, not to hide the action but to frame it. With light and expectation, the groom would lift the curtains, revealing the interior. If everything was in order, the notary would have a prepared document read aloud. The words confirmed what everyone had witnessed. Then the feast would resume, full of merriment and gossip. If everything was in order, the bride would leave the room with attendants, sealing the official version of events with a kiss. The groom would seal his version with wax, dropping it into a container to be opened later. No appeal was possible, but no retraction was needed either. Society had seen enough. The bride was taken to a separate room with windows covered. Candles flickered, casting shadows on the walls. Women gossiped, comparing the bride's appearance to expectations. Men drank deeply, discussing what had transpired behind the bed curtains. This was not just a party, it was an accounting. A successful night meant witnesses could report a thriving match made by God. A botched night meant accusations of witchcraft, impotence, or worse, scandal. The whole town would know about it tomorrow. From King Henry VIII to Queen Elizabeth I, royal weddings followed these rules. Sometimes exceptions were made, like when Henry VIII married Anne Boleyn and the king insisted on privacy, so he could consummate the marriage before telling England, but most people didn't have that option. If you awoke in 1380, your wedding night was not yours. Your body was on display. Its performance was the talk of the town. If you failed to deliver, everyone knew about it. If you delivered too well, everyone knew about it. And once you started speaking, everything you said could be called into question. Nobody was more aware of this than the bride and groom. Nothing they did or said was truly private. They were not man and wife. They were evidence. They were a case. They were a product to be inspected and approved. We have now reached level 3. To continue descending, click the link below and subscribe. Your most private fears won't belong to you. They will belong to the court, to the clergy, to your neighbors, and to the clerk sharpening his quill to record them forever. So you think your wedding night was bad? Yeah, me too. In medieval Europe, even your most private and vulnerable moments, your wedding night, could be transformed into a staged performance for an audience, because in the Middle Ages, the consummation of a marriage was not just an intimate act between 2 people in love. It was a matter of state, of law, and of religion. Failure to prove that it happened could unravel political alliances, annul unions, and ruin entire families. Privacy was not a right. It was a luxury nobody thought existed. Imagine the year is 1445. You are Margaret of Anjou, a girl of just 15 years, married to Henry VI of England. Your marriage is meant to unite kingdoms, secure peace and stabilize shaky dynasties. But none of that matters if the marriage is not consummated, and to verify it, they weren't just standing outside the bed. They were inside, surrounding the curtained bed, straining their ears for sounds, peering for movement, waiting for proof that the marriage had been consummated. The Archbishop of Canterbury himself stood at the foot of the bed, blessing the act. Every rustle of fabric, every whispered word, every trembling breath was part of the ceremony. For Margaret and Henry, their most terrifying private act was turned into a public ritual, one upon which the fate of nations depended, and this was not an exception. It was tradition. Royal and noble weddings across Europe were accompanied by ceremonies of public verification. Before the act itself, there was an undressing ritual. Imagine being stripped not by your spouse, but by relatives and attendants, while guests sang crude songs and mocked your body. The bride's female relatives would remove her gown piece by piece, commenting on her youth, her fertility, her worthiness. The groom's family would undress him with jeers and lewd jokes, reminding him of his duty. Every layer removed was a spectacle for the watching crowd, a grotesque parody of intimacy performed as entertainment and verification. Once stripped, the couple was led through halls filled with guests who threw food, herbs, and sometimes filth, supposedly for fertility. Drunk nobles would shout advice or warnings. Priests would bless the bed with holy water and recite prayers for quick conception. The bed itself was treated as sacred space, but its sanctity came with a terrifying requirement. Witnesses had to see and hear enough to confirm success. Curtains might shield the couple, but they were thin and the shadows told their own story. Some accounts are almost unbearable to read. Catherine of Aragon, a Spanish princess married to Prince Arthur of England in 1501, endured such a ceremony. 6 nobles, along with the Spanish ambassador, were present to ensure the alliance was sealed. Arthur, after the night, declared he had been in Spain, and demanded ale, a crude way of assuring the crowd he had done his duty. Yet decades later, when Henry VIII sought to annul his marriage to Catherine, the question of whether that consummation had truly occurred was dragged back into court, and the testimony of witnesses was used as evidence. A single night haunted her for the rest of her life. We can only imagine the torment of those innocent nights, because for the Church, marriage was not complete until the act of penetration. So even if the couple had done the deed, they had to prove it. If not, they ran the risk of being called out for their failure. And those failures were not just humiliating for the couple involved, they were lucrative for the Church, which profited from the sins it condemned. To learn how bishops and priests built entertainment empires off the sins of others, watch this video. Welcome to my channel. While noble couples were forced to perform under the gaze of witnesses, another darker stage was already thriving just beyond the cathedral doors. If consummation ceremonies revealed how little privacy existed in noble marriages, the economy of sin revealed how shamelessly the Church profited from the very desires it condemned. Welcome to the domain of the bishops, men who thundered from pulpits about purity, while secretly running sprawling entertainment empires, enterprises so vast that their revenues built cathedrals and armed papal armies. The hypocrisy is staggering. Now stay with me. We'll tell you about the bishop's secret source of income right after this. Imagine the Bishop of Winchester, draped in velvet robes, preaching on Sunday about the dangers of lust, about sin and corruption, about the fires of damnation awaiting those who gave in to their bodies. Now imagine that very same bishop the next morning reviewing ledgers filled with profits from his entertainment houses, 18 separate establishments across London's Southwark district, employing more than 1,000 women, all paying taxes directly to his coffers. They were known as the Winchester geese, women marked by law as both workers and sinners, branded with shame yet essential to the bishop's wealth. These establishments were not hidden. They advertised openly, with signs swinging in the wind, prices painted clearly for all to see, and above the door, the bishop's own coat of arms. Step inside one of these houses, and you'd find rooms carefully designed to accommodate customers. Windows where women displayed themselves, and clerks calculating profits. This was not chaos. It was bureaucracy. Weekly reports recorded revenues, inspections certified women as clean or diseased, and taxes were extracted with ruthless efficiency. In some houses, women paid extra fees to work on holy days, despite official bans. Sin was prohibited from the pulpit, but sanctified on the bishop's ledger, and the profits were immense. In modern terms, thousands upon thousands of coins flowed each week. enough to build a church every year, enough to pay mercenaries, enough to keep bishops living like princes. Even the great Winchester Cathedral, a monument of stone and stained glass, was funded not only by tithes but by the blood and sweat of these women. Every hymn sung beneath its vaulted ceilings was, in some sense, purchased with coin from the very industry the bishop condemned. And Winchester was not unique. Across Europe, bishops and even popes followed the same path. In Avignon, during the papal exile, a vast entertainment complex operated under the Vatican's direct control. Over 200 women worked there, with rooms reserved for visiting church dignitaries. Taxes from the operation funded papal campaigns and armies. In the German lands, archbishops controlled chains of establishments in multiple cities. In Seville, Spain, the cathedral's own entertainment quarter was connected to the sacred building by underground tunnels, so priests could visit discreetly. Everywhere, the pattern was the same. Morality preached, sin exploited, profit secured. The system was meticulous. Women required annual permits to work. They paid sin taxes weekly. They were examined by the bishop's physicians, who stamped them fit or barred them from working until bribes were paid. Guards patrolled the districts, ensuring order and protecting the bishop's investment. They acted as both enforcers and debt collectors, dragging reluctant customers back to pay what they owed. The bishop even offered retirement schemes, insurance for women too old to work, though few survived long enough to claim them. The hypocrisy was justified with twisted theology. Augustine had once described vice as a necessary sewer in the city, foul but required to carry filth away. Thomas Aquinas argued that by controlling these houses, bishops prevented greater sins, adultery, assault, chaos. By regulating lust, they claimed to protect morality. But the truth was simpler. It was about money. Cathedrals were expensive, wars endless, bishops greedy. Entertainment revenues were reliable and vast. To refuse them would have been financial suicide. And so the church industrialized sin. Bishops became CEOs of desire. They licensed bodies, taxed transactions, and punished those who worked outside their system. The very men who ordered humiliating fitness trials and witnessed royal consummations were the same men who counted profits from 1,000 women forced to sell themselves in the bishop's name. Imagine the contradictions in the life of one such woman. By day, she was preached to about purity, seated in a separate section of the cathedral, forced to listen to sermons condemning her work. By night, she returned to her room under the bishop's crest, serving the very system that damned her. If she failed to pay, the bishop's guards would drag her out. If she fell ill, the bishop's physicians would inspect her body like livestock. If she grew old, she was cast aside. Her life was consumed by the machinery of hypocrisy, her body the foundation of cathedral wealth. And this was accepted, not hidden, not whispered, public. The people of medieval cities walked past these houses, saw the signs, knew exactly where the bishop's money came from. It was not scandal, it was policy. They say love makes the world go round, but in the Middle Ages it could also make it deadly. When we think of medieval love, we often imagine courtly romance, but behind the poetry and pageantry, something darker was brewing. A bishop running an empire of sin, selling indulgences for money and power. Well, that wasn't as shocking as what came next, because as medical science took shape, it uncovered a truth that turned intimacy into a battlefield. It wasn't enough for medieval love to be about desire. It had to be about duty. It started with the best intentions, really. Like today, doctors were trying to solve a persistent problem: why some couples struggled to conceive. Their solution, a scientific way to ensure female orgasms. It sounds progressive, but it stemmed from a shocking conclusion. Male semen wasn't enough for conception. Women had to release their own seed. As one influential physician put it, without her seed, there could be no child. Suddenly, a wife's pleasure became a medical necessity. Without it, a marriage was incomplete. Husbands weren't just encouraged, they were obligated to ensure their wives reached climax. If they failed at their most fundamental duty, producing heirs. You can almost hear the awkward silence after that bombshell. Then the tables turned. Female orgasms became a prescription. Doctors prescribed position, music, even devices to stimulate women during sex. Spiced oils, heated herbs, a symphony of sensation. It was a bizarre fusion of medicine and desire, and it didn't stop at the bedroom door. To ensure satisfaction, couples were encouraged to take their intimacy public. Imagine strolling through a medieval marketplace and overhearing two doctors discussing a patient's frigid reaction. Noting her resistance, her discomfort, her lack of pleasure. Privacy was gone. Intimacy was public, and if a wife couldn't climax, or she might be accused of everything from witchcraft to sin, the pressure was immense. A noble woman struggling to conceive might endure humiliating treatments, heated oils, spices, strange devices, all in the name of science and sanctioned by the church. Medical theory and religious doctrine collided. Was a child conceived in delight more blessed? Was a child conceived in misery defective? Confessors were even instructed to ask wives about their intimate experiences. The intrusion is shocking, and in this tangled web of desire and duty, one thing was clear: pleasure wasn't sinful, it was essential. But what if a woman wanted to prevent pregnancy? Potions, rituals, desperate improvisation, nothing was off limits. In the 16th century, a woman was executed for killing 2 lovers with a poisoned draught. Such risks were part of a larger pattern. Archaeologists found skeletons with lethal levels of metals, evidence of desperate attempts to control fertility. It was a dangerous game, but for many, it was a necessary one. The alternative was worse. Today, we marvel at medieval progress, acknowledging female desire and mutual responsibility. But beneath this lay a darker reality. Medicine and religion clashed. Physicians argued with theologians, each side blaming the other for marital woes. Love became a battlefield, a duty, a prescription, a crime. It depended on what role a woman was playing, and when desire was no longer private, it ceased to be a luxury. It became a life and death game. Welcome to the channel. If medicine made pleasure a duty, and contraception turned survival into poison, then the pursuit of love itself dragged medieval society into its darkest corners. Love potions, a realm where passion was brewed, not with roses and honey, but with powders, strange herbs, and secret midnight rituals. The recipes were bizarre, yet widespread. People desperate for affection turned to grimoires filled with instructions that read more like witchcraft than romance. Some called for unusual powders, others for exotic herbs, and many required symbolic objects from the person they desired, such as hair, clothing, or small personal tokens. Love in the medieval world was not whispered poetry, but ritual, secrecy, and desperation. The preparation was ritualistic, steeped in fear. A woman seeking passion might visit a wise healer, gathering herbs by moonlight and grinding them into powders. These were then mixed into wine, bread, or stews. Locks of hair might be braided with incense and burned in hidden fires. Words were whispered in half-remembered Latin prayers, and actions performed at crossroads or near churches, where superstition and faith intertwined. The danger was immense. Too little of a potion and it failed. Too much and the target might fall ill or become irrational. Chroniclers described symptoms: racing hearts, fever, unnatural obsession. Some victims wasted away, poisoned not by sorcery but by unsafe concoctions of herbs. Others became paranoid, convinced they were enchanted. Whether it was poison, psychology, or placebo hardly mattered. The effects felt real. The church condemned love magic as witchcraft, but enforcement was inconsistent. Noble women caught using such potions were sometimes confined to convents. Poor women often faced exile or worse. Yet the practice persisted, because for many it was the only weapon in a world where marriage determined survival. To marry a merchant, a knight, or a minor noble could mean the difference between wealth and ruin. Love potions were less about romance and more about strategy. And no medieval love strategy was more desperate than what they did when a marriage failed to kindle passion. Enter the bedroom, a place where scandal could erupt as suddenly as desire. Imagine this: you are a medieval nobleman. You've just returned from crusade. Your wife is young, beautiful, but cold. Your marriage is a disaster. Now enter the solution: a sleeping draught. No, not for you, my friend, for your wife. As she sleeps, your men will slip into your bed. While the lady sleeps, they will consummate the marriage. Your heirs will be legitimate. Your wife will bear no blame. She will wake believing she slept alone. Voila, problem solved. This was no figment of Hollywood. It was common practice. Even popes advised it. Innocent VIII suggested a sleeping draught for his sister Beatrice, so that her husband would find her more willing. And he was not alone. Doctors prescribed opium, brandy, or even mandrake root. Marriage was a sacrament, a duty, and a queen was obliged to bear heirs. So if a wife resisted, the king could intervene, as Henry VIII did with Anne Boleyn. When Anne refused sex, Henry sent his servants with wine to make sure that she was ready for his royal touch. When the queen resisted, they were charged with adultery. One servant claimed she slipped a drug into the queen's drink. Another said they rubbed a narcotic ointment on Anne's skin. Did any of it work? We don't know. But that excuse is almost as old as marriage itself. So next time you think your spouse is giving you the cold shoulder, consider the medieval alternative. No sleeping draughts, no royal butlers, just good old-fashioned conversation. Ah yes, because medieval intimacy was public property. Your body could be evidence in court. Your wedding bed could be a stage. Your bishop could profit from sin while damning it. Your doctor could prescribe pleasure while your priest condemned it. Your choices in love could lead to exile, ruin, or death. We like to imagine medieval people as repressed, prudish, obsessed with purity, but the reality was the opposite. They exposed, displayed, regulated, and judged every aspect of human desire. What we guard as private was once community business. What we hide in shame was once paraded in the streets, and no medieval display of desire was more humiliating than this. Let's go to southern France. In the 13th century, a young woman named Guilhelm was accused of adultery. Her lover, a married man, witnesses testified they saw the couple kissing, heard them whispering sweet nothings, even saw them together in compromising positions. Now comes the trial. The accused must prove their innocence. How do they do it? With a kiss. Not a gentle peck, mind you, but a full-blown test of mouth and tongue. This was no romantic interlude. It was a legal ordeal, and the stakes were high. If she passed, she went free. If she failed, she faced public humiliation and possible exile. So Guilhelm puckered up and kissed the hem of the judge's robe. Was it hot, heavy petting, or a dry, perfunctory press? History does not say. But in a medieval courtroom, the answer mattered little. The ordeal was all about creating spectacle, a lesson in public shaming. This is medieval intimacy. Awkward, embarrassing, humiliating, crazy, but hey, at least it's not digital. Thanks for watching.